Okay, so we have this Cat IT38F loader, and the transmission has decided to not work very good anymore. So there was a bunch of metal that was found in the filter, and had replaced the filter, put new fluid in it, tried to flush everything out just to get it sort of back up and operational, which it works just under light load. So we are able to use it this summer, and we now have a reman transmission for this thing, and now we have the task of rebuilding this. So to start, we basically just removed a bunch of covers. There was a walkway along here that we removed, and then a cover that runs around the front there, another walkway on the other side, and a grab bar on the other side. Now, what we sort of started with was disconnecting a lot of the hydraulic lines. There is about 15 to 20 hydraulic lines. So we have all these caps and bolts that we install to keep all the fluid from leaking out, because the oil reservoir is up top. So just the gravity of that oil will push it all out of the lines. If you were to just undo them and leave them, it would just dump oil all over the place. So got those all capped off. You can see we've used zip ties to mark where they need to go back to. And that just keeps all your hydraulic circuits nice and organized, so you know where you gotta go. The wiring harnesses were real simple. Just had 3 plugs there, and then a bunch of smaller miscellaneous plugs, and unplugged all that stuff. A couple hex keys for the connectors here that keep them locked in place. And once again, colored zip ties on everything so we know where it all goes. So the next thing that we had to do today was get all the cab mount bolts out. There's four cab mount bolts. Here's one. And then these pillars that run up, there's other ones that are inside. So you have to access these bolts obviously from the inside of the cab. Now, there's these access doors where there's a couple filters that sit here and on the other side. And I'll show you. We'll get inside of here. So there's a plate that sits over top of that access hole. You can see the tube that the bolt goes down through. And you can see just how rusty and greasy. Like, this thing is a 1997, so it's got some age on it. And the bolts did not want to come out very nice. This pail was just full of mud and water and grease that was inside of those holes. I probably spent an hour or so cleaning out all that stuff just to be able to get the socket on there. The socket was, originally I got a 37 to fit. I hammered that on, but then there was so much rust scale, eventually we got down to like a 35 or a 34 mil. You can see there's a couple more covers, emergency brake handle. Here's the rear cab mount bolts. There's just like a storage tray that gets bolted in there. There's a bunch of small Torx. They're all T30 Torx. And I believe these bolts that ran across here are all T40. The trick was to get these back cab mount bolts out. They're so tight. We had to use a 3/4 inch drive ratchet and a 10-foot pipe or 8-foot pipe, but there's a cab mount bolt that's back here. Try to get in here and show you. Grab the light. So underneath of this fire extinguisher, there's a little plastic cover that comes off, and there's a bolt that's down in there. Now, this center console is completely plastic. It's one huge section, and then we got all our control panels and everything bolts onto there. There's wiring all underneath of this thing. So we had a 1-inch impact gun that we were trying to use to get those bolts out. They would not budge. So what we ended up having to do was get the torch, and we had some fire retardant fabric that we lined the inside of this with, and we were able to get just enough heat in there where we could get them to break free. And yeah, you can just see how greasy those areas are. Like all the water and everything from the workers just pools up inside underneath. There's no like weather seal or anything underneath that cover. So it just sucked, but we got them off. It took us probably 3 or 4 hours to get those 4 bolts out. So that was the big challenge today, was just getting those off. We really wanted to get the cab off today, but unfortunately, we didn't quite get there. So the next thing, tomorrow morning, we're just waiting on a couple more caps and bolts for these hydraulic lines. And then what we're gonna do is take those 4 hydraulic lines that come off of that steering box right there. You can see they're still attached. And we can cap and bolt those. There's a big plate, you can see the bolts there, that houses the pedals and the steering box. And basically we thought, well, we could just undo those bolts and pull the cab and leave all that stuff, but it turns out that we would have to remove all the steering column cover stuff, probably remove the column, and it just seemed like a bunch of extra work, so we're just gonna go ahead and undo those hydraulic lines. We did end up breaking the 3/4 inch drive ratchet today. It's a fairly big ratchet, but she's an oldie. But yeah, we had this bar on it, and we needed all the leverage we could get. It was me and another guy pushing with all we got to get these bolts to break free for the cab. But we ended up getting them all out, so tomorrow we'll be pulling the cab and we'll continue on after we get that off. I'll give you an update.